So I've been struggling with motivation a little bit on this programming journey of mine, and I think every project has this moment where the original excitement, you've kind of burned through it. The original sort of things that captured your attention, you've maybe worked through them all, and now you have like the tougher, maybe less sexy and interesting stuff to do, and your motivation starts to drop. And this is kind of a critical moment in a project because there's definitely a path that you can take that leads to just slowly giving up or giving up completely. And I'm feeling that now, but I learned this little trick that I use to work through it, and I think it might be helpful. So I call it talking to the kid. And it's kind of a silly thing, but it actually really works. And there's some deep psychological sort of principles underlying it. So I'll kind of try and describe it here. Basically, the idea is that we are all kids in some respect when it comes to learning new things. So picture a kid learning to ride a bicycle and how awkward and shaky they are. And now picture yourself riding a bicycle, how like, stable and confident you are. You can definitely see the same things in any skill you're learning. So imagine back to the beginning of your career, at the thing you're really good at today, but how awkward and weird and shaky and cringy you were back then. It's the same idea. So anything you start will always have that characteristic. You will always be a kid in this thing. So even if you're a CEO running a multi-billion-dollar company and you're running your first marathon, you're still a kid when it comes to marathons, and you're still going to have that same awkward shakiness as a real kid in age it would have learning to ride a bicycle. So I had this feeling recently where I just kind of looked at my computer and I was like, I don't really feel like programming. I just couldn't find the motivation. I had a bunch of like stuff I didn't want to bother doing. It was non-fun tasks. And I was kind of like, I noticed that this was kind of one of these critical moments. And so I looked at that and said, I need to figure that out. So what I did was I talked to the kid. I said, all right, kid, you're not feeling this. I get it. It's not too much fun, but we got to make some progress on this project. We don't have to do this particular thing. And I'm like literally talking to myself, and I'm saying, okay, so what are we going to do today? We got to do something. We can't just like sit around and do nothing. So we got to do something. And the kid said that he wanted to go and like do some sketches of some new features, some new ideas. Didn't want to be at the computer and wanted to like think of some new stuff. So we went to a coffee shop with the iPad and we sketched a bunch of new features, and that was fun. The kid also said that he wanted to have some McDonald's for dinner and watch a motorcycle race, which I decided was fine enough. So that night we went out and grabbed a couple double hamburgers and fries and then watched a motorcycle race. And it was a great day. And the next morning, there was a little bit more energy available, enough that I could get to the computer and build a little bit momentum on working through some of those kind of less fun tasks. And that little interaction was an example of listening to that part of me, the kid, because normally, or a lot of us have the sort of the reflex to like grind and force and push ourselves to do something. And that's fine. And that's necessary sometimes. And there's moments where you have to do that. But it's also a dangerous thing to do too much, because you risk creating the conditions where the kid doesn't ever want to work on this thing at all. The whole project is poisoned because it always feels like a grind. And so just as a side note, if you're working with teams, you have to be mindful of the fact that you can push them sometimes, but you can't push them all the time. You'll start to lose people because work will just become unfun stuff. So this is kind of like the big unlock. In fact, if you could recognize that there's this kid part of you and you can find a way to kind of talk to it, even if it's kind of like half laughing at yourself at the start, you will have tapped into what is effectively like a deep sort of connection with the part of you that is actually at the core of a lot of your motivation and excitement about stuff. When you find something new that you get excited about, like I did with this programming project, that is the kid speaking to you. It's not the adult part. It's not the serious part. It's the part that's excited and wants to have fun and is curious and wants to play. So finding that connection with that kid is a really meaningful thing. And if you have to laugh at yourself a little bit, then that works. But hopefully that's useful. I definitely think the kid is a big part of this project, and as things get more difficult, you have to kind of start finding ways to work with that kid to keep things going and keep things fun. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you later. Ciao.